and welcome back to the Goodreads Virtual Book Club. I'm Brianna, and with me is
Jasmine.
And today we are not in the same place, but I feel like this turned out better for this book because I feel like we are in the woods right now, and it is a perfect representation of Hidden Pictures, which is the book we read this month for our spooky October read. There it is, Hidden Pictures. And this book is pretty spooky. It has a really great twist ending that I personally did not really see coming. I mean, afterwards, I think you can kind of put the pieces together. But while you're in it, I didn't see the ending coming, at least the way it played out.
No, it was good. It was a good twist.
It was a good twist. I mean, obviously it's somewhat formulaic for the thriller horror genre, but with a supernatural counterpart. And there are still some loopholes that we don't quite get answers to, but I suppose you can imagine your own answers. But let's just go ahead and get started. So before we get into the discussion, I'll just tell you a little bit about what Hidden Pictures is about. So it is about a young girl named Mallory who is getting out of rehab for a drug addiction that she developed in high school. And she's getting a new job as a nanny for a very wealthy couple in Spring Brook, New Jersey. She's going to be a live-in nanny for the summer, potentially longer than that, but definitely the summer. And strange things start happening. Their young son, Teddy, starts drawing these real creepy pictures, which we'll show you some of. And she's trying to put the pieces together as to whether there is a ghost haunting Teddy and herself and what this ghost wants from them. So it's bare bones summary. So let's get into it. So as we said, it starts with Mallory. And Mallory is, I think she starts at 18 months sober when she gets this job?
Yeah, she's 21, 18 months sober.
Yes. Well, actually, I should say, so it's interesting. The first part of the book, she's not sober yet. It's kind of a flashback. And it's this weird study she's doing in a hospital where they're trying to determine if people can feel when people are looking at them.
The male gaze.
Yes, if females can feel the male gaze, like when men are looking at them. And Mallory is part of this study because she needs the money. And she can feel better than anybody else when men are staring at her. She hears, it's like a mosquito buzzing in her ear. She hears it. It's like a physical auditory thing. And obviously, the director of the study really wants to talk to her, but Mallory never hears from her again. So that's kind of where we start.
Well, she doesn't hear from her because she sold her phone for drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, she sold her phone, so she can't get in touch with her, basically.
Wants to talk to her, but has no way of getting a hold of her.
No, because Mallory sold her phone, so she has no phone. But when we next see Mallory, she is 18 months sober in this rehab program. She has her sponsor who is, he's pretty helpful. Like, he found her this job and he's encouraging her to get back into running because she used to be a track star at her high school. She was going to go to Penn State on a scholarship. And that scholarship fell through because of her drug addiction, which we'll explain why a little bit further. But so her sponsor found her this new job, and she is going to interview with the parents of this young child. And at first she interviews with Caroline. Caroline's the mother. She is a psychotherapist.
Yeah, around that.
Yeah, she works in psychology at the VA hospital, and she's starting the interview. Things are seemingly going really well. Caroline's young son, Teddy, is the one that Mallory will be watching, and Teddy really seems to like Mallory as well. He gives her a drawing, which we'll show you kind of the first little bit of his drawings. Finding it. This little guy. Oh, there it is. This background is not very forgiving. But he loves to draw, and he gives her a drawing, and they seem to have a really good connection right off the bat. And then the husband comes home, and it seems like, at least with Caroline, Mallory is like, it seems like I kind of have this job in the bag. And then Ted comes home and like asks Mallory all of these invasive questions, and like really kind of accusatory questions about, you know, her drug addiction and her past and going to rehab, and whether like he feels that she's even fit for this job. And so she's like, I don't got it. I think after this interaction, I don't have it. But her sponsor calls her and is like, hey, you got the job. Congratulations. They loved you. So Mallory's really excited because this is like a really good step in the right direction for her. She's really trying to rebuild her life and get back on track and kind of figure out what she wants to do. Because everything kind of paused in her life, and she had some really traumatic events happen to her, which we'll explain later. But she's really kind of unsure what she wants to do or what direction she wants to go in now. And so she's really happy to get this job to get some money in the bank and kind of figure out what she wants to do in the future. So she goes in, she's going to be a live-in nanny. Spring Brook, where they at, is like a super wealthy neighborhood, which Mallory really likes because it's not anything that she had growing up. She's from South Philly, so it sounds like she grew up in kind of a rougher neighborhood. So she's like never really experienced like wealthy suburbia like Spring Brook, New Jersey is. It's very quaint and very cutesy, at least on the surface it is. And she really likes it there. And she gets this little cottage in the back of the Maxwell's property that's right by the woods where we are now. And she like they've completely like retrofitted this little cottage, so it looks really great. It used to be a garden shed, but now it's like a pretty neat little studio cottage. It's a little creepy because it does sit right next to the woods, and the woods are very dense, but Mallory likes it. It seems good.
In the 1940s, it was a cottage, and then the owners made it a garden shed because they weren't going to go in it for reasons we
anymore. Know. Yes, for reasons we don't quite know yet, but we know them pretty soon because Mallory meets the Maxwell's neighbor, Mitzi. Mitzi's pretty eccentric. She's a character. She fashions herself as a psychic. She holds psychic readings in her home, which is interesting because you never see any clients interactions with Mitzi. Like, she doesn't really seem to have like a huge clientele, but she says she does. And she kind of tells Mallory a little bit about this cottage / garden shed. Like Jasmine said, in the 40s, a young woman named Annie Barrett came from Europe, somewhere in Europe, we don't know yet, to stay with her cousin, and was seemingly brutally murdered in this cottage because it was covered in blood, but never found, just completely disappeared off the face of the earth. Nobody knows anything that happened to Annie Barrett. And the reason that Mallory kind of wants to know more about this cottage is that Teddy has an imaginary friend named Anya. And Mallory thinks that perhaps Anya and Annie are somehow connected because their names are somewhat similar. And she finds out a little bit more about Annie, not only from Mitzi, because like Annie Barrett's like their local urban legend, kind of like a boogeyman. They call that little cottage thing like a devil house, and nobody goes there because Annie was apparently horribly murdered.
The devil house?
I don't know, maybe I would.
Someone got murdered.
I don't know. But it would be creepy, that's for sure. And this imaginary friend that Teddy has, Anya, is the main reason why the Maxwells want a nanny for Teddy, because Teddy has a really hard time making friends, and they want him to focus on a real person outside of his imaginary friend. So they think if they bring Mallory in, Teddy will be so focused on Mallory and the things that he's doing with Mallory that he'll forget about Anya, his imaginary friend. That's Caroline's psychology behind this, is she thinks that he'll kind of put Anya in the background and focus more on Mallory. And at first it kind of works. They have all of these fun adventures. Mallory really encourages Teddy to kind of use his imagination. His favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz, so they kind of reenact The Wizard of Oz in the woods behind the cottage, behind their house, and they name all of the different paths, and they get like little weapons and stuff for the trees, and they reenact a bunch of scenes, and they do all kinds of stuff throughout their day. They do baking projects where they go to the grocery store and get stuff. They do this whole reenactment of The Wizard of Oz. They swim. And then every afternoon, Teddy has his quiet time. And during this quiet time, he always produces more drawings. And these drawings are getting a little more disturbing. Oh, we can't see it, Jasmine.
Can't see mine? Because we're in the woods.
No. Because we're in the woods. We're in the woods. But she can't, they're getting more and more disturbing.
I'm saying that if my 5-year-old drew me any of these pictures, I wouldn't sleep at night.
Well, and not only that, but pictures are only, here's one. Oh.
Yeah.
There it is. These pictures are only for Mallory.
Can you see this one? Well, you can, but.
Come closer. No, it's because we're in the woods. Man.
The woods.
The woods obscure everything.
So
these pictures are getting increasingly disturbing. So it's like pictures of a man and a woman. This man is dragging the woman, who's seemingly unconscious, through the woods. And Teddy says that Anya says that these pictures are for Mallory only, that she's not to show Caroline or Ted, Teddy's parents, that these are only for Mallory. And so Mallory's like, I don't really know what to do with that. Because she wants to, she wants to keep Teddy's confidence. Like she wants him to build trust with him. But also she kind of needs to show these drawings to his parents because they are highly disturbing. And that's also, I should mention, the Maxwells have like a crazy number of house rules that Mallory has to follow in order to like continue working with them and with Teddy. And one of them is no religious stuff whatsoever and no supernatural paranormal stuff. So Mallory kind of thinks that this imaginary friend is more than just a child's imaginary friend. Like perhaps it's the ghost of Annie Barrett, but she can't really tell that or bring that up to Caroline and Ted because they already don't want any of that type of talk in their household because it's against the house rules. So she's kind of in a quandary. Like she's not really sure what to do. Introducing a new main character in this plot, Adrian. Adrian is their gardener. Well, he's the gardener's son. But this is like no ordinary gardener. Like this is like, he's like a multi-million-dollar landscaper who also lives in Spring Brook. Like he does everybody's lawns, and they have like a beautiful house they call the Flower Castle. But Teddy is pretty enamored with Adrian, and so is Mallory. And Adrian seems pretty enamored with Mallory too. And so Mallory kind of takes Adrian into her confidence in the hopes that maybe he can tell her a little bit more about Annie Barrett and the town of Spring Brook itself. And Adrian also knows the story of Annie Barrett.
Yeah, and then his mom's like a part-time librarian. So for the society or something. And so she can look things up for him.
Yes, she works in the library in the local history section in the archive. So she has access to archival materials that the public doesn't necessarily have access to. So they kind of enlist Adrian's mom's help as well to see what information they can find about Annie Barrett and any information at all. And the mom does find something in the archives. There was a small workbook of Annie's drawings that they find, which they really would like to see Annie's drawings because Teddy's drawings are changing. Teddy's drawings are no longer the little kid stick figures, but are becoming very, very complex and artistically gifted drawings, more so than Teddy's 5, by the way. So this is like more than maybe any 5-year-old. Who knows? Maybe a prodigy could produce these, but it's like way more than what Mallory thinks that Teddy is capable of based upon his past drawings of these stick figures.
His drawing wouldn't change from one day to another. He wouldn't be stick figures and, real life art forms the next day.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really drastic difference. It's a really drastic difference between what it starts out and then what it kind of starts to morph into. And so she really wants more information on Annie because she's convinced that Anya is Annie and this is no imaginary friend, but this is like a haunting possession shenanigans happening. And that Annie is trying to tell her story through Teddy in these drawings. And so they get this book that shows Annie's drawings, but none of it matches with what Teddy is producing. Like the stuff that they have in this book is more abstract art and it's not super helpful except for the foreword by Annie's cousin George, who basically like says a whole bunch of not nice stuff about Annie. And directly says that, she was probably murdered and has since disappeared. But it was not putting Annie in a very favorable light, at least in his estimations. So they feel like they're kind of at a dead end. Like Adrian and Mallory feel like they're not sure what to do next. So in comes Mitzi. They think that perhaps since this book was a dead end, what they can do is they can ask Mitzi to perform a seance so they can speak directly to Annie herself and figure out what's happening. The only problem is that Teddy has to be there for this seance, according to Mitzi, for this seance to work, because Teddy is the main medium that Annie/Anya is using to express their story. So Adrian comes over, kind of watches Teddy while Teddy swims outside, and then Mitzi and Mallory perform this seance in the Devil House cottage, because that's potentially where Annie was murdered, to try and speak to Annie's ghost. And Mallory, again, thinking back to that study that Mallory was a part of, where she could feel people watching her, she feels like there is a presence in the room. She's hearing the buzzing. She feels like there's something there. She feels like something is like taking over herself. And the little cursor on the Ouija board is a moving. It's a moving. And Mitzi thinks that Mallory is moving it because it's just spitting out just garbage, like just meaningless letters. Like it's not spelling anything. And so Mitzi just gets increasingly frustrated with Mallory and upset with her that Mallory is not taking it seriously, that she's, just playing around because this cursor is moving around and nothing's happening. So Mitzi is like, you know what? I'm done. I'm out. You clearly don't take this seriously. You don't take me seriously or my job seriously. Good luck on this haunting business. Don't call me. And so they feel like they've hit another dead end. Because Mallory feels like she did talk to Annie, or she like experienced something with Annie, but they didn't really get anything out of it because what was on the Ouija board didn't make any sense. It's just like meaningless letters. So they feel like they're kind of stuck again. But Teddy keeps drawing all of these photos. So Mallory is trying to see and prove that Teddy is drawing these photos because she feels like now she needs to talk to Caroline and Ted about it. She needs to, because it's getting disturbing, more disturbing than it was getting before. Because Teddy's drawing pictures that show like a woman being strangled, a woman being buried in the ground. Like, it's getting dark. So she gets this baby camera from their basement and puts it in Teddy's room. Because at quiet time, that seemingly 2 hours when he's, doing his own stuff, she can hear him talking to somebody, but nobody's there. So she really wants to see what's happening in his room. And she basically wants to capture a ghost on film. So she puts it in there, and what she sees is Teddy, who is left-handed, like Mallory is also left-handed, is furiously scribbling with his right hand. So he is drawing these images, and Mallory is like, this is proof that Annie/Anya is using Teddy as a conduit to draw these pictures and tell her story. And she feels like now she has enough evidence to present to Ted and Caroline what exactly she thinks is happening. So she does tell them. They think that
she gets caught, right, from the seance, because Teddy draws.
Yeah, she does get caught from the seance.
And that's when she goes like full steam, tells the whole story, but does it in such like a panicky, kind of crazy way that, they're not believing her and thinking that she's back on, was it heroin?
They think that she's using again.
Yeah.
Because
she's frantic.
I mean, it's a fantastical story. Like,
yeah. And she went and did against the rules, which is, 1, talk to Mitzi, and 2, she wasn't watching Teddy, and 3, like the superstitious stuff.
Yeah. So 3 big rules she's broken in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
But she's like truly, really convinced that this is what's happening, and she doesn't see any other outcome than the one that she has presented for them. Like, she can't see another side to this story. And like at first, Ted and Caroline, yes, they think she's using again, but they're kind of willing to give her the benefit of the doubt the first time. And just say like, clearly this is not what's happening. Teddy, and Teddy reinforces, he basically says what his parents want to hear, especially his mom. And it's like, he knows Anya's not real. She's just an imaginary friend. No, he didn't draw these things. He doesn't know, what Mallory's talking about. And Mallory's convinced that he does know. And he's just telling his parents what they want to hear because he doesn't want to get in trouble. So again, what are they going to do next? Because they got to do something, because these images are getting more and more graphic. And Mallory's kind of getting in hot water with her employers because she's going against all of their rules, trying to prove the story that she thinks happens. And then during this time, Adrian's mom is still working in the archives. She finds a phone number for a person that they should call. So Mallory does call, thinking it's going to be another dead end, because they don't hear back from her for a while. But as Mallory feels like something bad is happening. Also, she started to take these really long afternoon naps where at first she doesn't even feel tired, but like 4 or 5 hours will have passed while Teddy's just by himself doing stuff in his quiet time in his room.
He's playing iPad. You give a 5-year-old an iPad, you're not going to see him unless you go find them, because they're not going to tell you, oh, I'm done. He's
True.
never had an iPad before, and so he is like playing all the games.
All the games, which that we should say that is one of the consequences that happens after Mallory does tell Ted and Caroline is Caroline takes all of Teddy's drawing stuff and they give him an iPad instead. So Teddy can go to town playing Angry Birds.
Well, she's sending educational apps on there, and then he's just saying, "Oh, I'm playing Angry Birds." Which
yeah.
Any kid, any technology, and they're gonna find a way to get to the actual games and not the educational apps.
He's not using the educational apps.
Yeah.
He's playing the Angry Birds. And, telling Mallory point by point what each of the birds does and how they help. His strategy in Angry Birds.
Yes, we never had to listen to a 5-year-old strategy for any game. It's something else.
Yeah, and Teddy is no different. Like he has a full strategy with these birds, all of the different colors of birds. But so that's kind of what Teddy is focusing on now, and he's like not really talking about Anya, Annie anymore either. And that's when Mallory starts taking these longer and longer naps. Is during this time, and during one of these really long naps, she wakes up to drawings all over the walls, like all over the walls, light sockets, electrical outlets, like all over the walls. And obviously she can't explain it. Teddy says it wasn't him, and it wasn't Teddy. It was Mallory, and it really could only be Mallory. But the Maxwells see this, and they're like, this is one of the last straws, because we don't know what more we can, how much longer we can have you here, because they really think that she is using, and they think that she is drawing these pictures and saying Teddy is drawing them as a way to process, or at least Caroline is, as a way to process her own grief. Because we learn now, Mallory started using, she hurt herself pretty badly running track in high school, and she had to get surgery, so they gave her oxycodone, and she was using it just for a little while. But then she had got into a really, really bad car accident with her sister and her sister's friend, and her sister died in this car accident, and she really deeply blames herself for causing the accident, because she looked at her phone and there was a mountain bike in the road and they hit it. And so she blames herself a lot for this accident. So she just really kind of, through her grief, was trying anything to help herself and self-medicate, and abusing her prescription drugs, which led to a heroin addiction. And so Caroline is saying that Mallory is drawing all these images to try and express her feelings and her grief over her sister passing and her addiction problems. And so they make Mallory take a drug test, and she's not on anything, but now she's not allowed in the house anymore. She's only allowed in the cottage and the backyard. They've locked the house. But I think that's not the only bad thing that's been happening. Mitzi now is seemingly disappeared. Adrian and Mallory go into Mitzi's house to try and find the notes that Mitzi took during their seance, because Mallory is now thinking that maybe this wasn't just gibberish language that Annie was saying. Maybe it's not English. Maybe it's another language.
Well,
and so they're trying to find these notes.
There was a part where between her getting fired.
Well, she's not fired yet.
She got fired. That's the conversation she got fired at. When they locked her out.
True. She did get fired.
They're just giving her
still there.
Yeah, well, because she can't. Russell has to pick her up in like 3 days. So they're gonna put her on the streets. But Adrian finds the truth, which to know
which
the line.
Mallory has been lying to Adrian, because she wants to kind of pretend that she's a member of Spring Brook and, you know, kind of part of this wealthy suburbia that she never had. And she tells Adrian, which is partly true, she did get a full ride scholarship to Penn State for track, which because of her drug addiction. But she tells Adrian that, you know, she's going to Penn State. She's a track you know, on a track scholarship, which is not true.
Yeah.
And he finds out during this whole image drawing in the Maxwell's living room.
But he gets drawing himself at his house.
Yes.
And that's what brings him back to her. Because he's really mad that she lied, right? And embarrasses his friends, his mom's friends found out or something. But he came back and drove her to her home. And then she told her, that's how we found out about Beth and the whole story. And then they come back to Mitzi. So he's like, you couldn't have possibly drawn this and put it to my house because you don't know.
No, and brought it into.
Yeah.
No, and brought it to, you know, while his parents were there without anybody seeing them, nor could Teddy have, because Teddy's only 5, so there's really no way
so he's
that
like
he could have done it.
On her side now. Like, this is weird.
Yes, he's pretty convinced too that the spirit of Annie / Anya is haunting them and trying to say what happened to her and how she was murdered. So they go into Mitzi's house to retrieve these seance notes, and they find the seance notes, but they don't find Mitzi. Mitzi is like nowhere to be found. And then the police roll up, and they're caught kind of like breaking and entering, but they were. Adrian was saying that they should go in to check on Mitzi because it's, you know, maybe she could be hurt inside. Because she is older, so
that was
so they look, but they don't find Mitzi. Yeah, that was his reasoning because they really wanted to get these notes. But so they tell the police, you know, they haven't seen Mitzi. Mallory hasn't seen Mitzi since they had the seance where Mitzi kind of stormed off. But they find that Mitzi was sending, was it a text message to Mallory? Saying that Anya is not what you think.
Yeah, she it like leaves off like the last word to that unsent text message. So
yeah. And Mitzi is found in the woods behind the cottage. She has passed away. And at first we're not sure exactly what caused it, but it's heavily, well, I mean, we find out later, but even it's heavily implied that she had a drug overdose of some kind, because Mallory saw needles and other drug paraphernalia in her home. So Mitzi's passed away. They do have these seance notes, and they figure out after some trial and error that these notes are written in Hungarian. And it's saying like, beware of the thief. Don't trust
flower.
Yeah, protect the flower is what the seance note said. And so now they're kind of even more convinced. So Beth is the person who Adrian's mom gave the number for, who Mallory calls at first. And Mallory gets a call back from the assisted living facility where Beth is staying, from Beth's caretaker, who is, you know, saying like Beth.
Dolores.
Beth's
sister.
Dolores. Yes, that's right. I'm terrible with names. But
yeah.
from
Dolores is Annie's
granddaughter or daughter? Daughter. But Dolores is in an advanced stage of dementia, so they're not sure how much that she'll be able to tell them. She's also in Columbus, Ohio, and they're in New Jersey. So Adrian is like, hey, you know what? I'll go and I'll talk to Dolores, because
they're getting nowhere.
They're getting nowhere, and Mallory can't go because the Maxwells are throwing her like a goodbye party the next day, and she feels like she really has to be there for Teddy to kind of say goodbye to him. And so Adrian's going to Columbus, Ohio to find Dolores and talk to her. And he finds he finds her, he talks to her, and they find out, which one of the police officers who interviewed Mallory when they were breaking into Mitzi's house basically kind of already told her, like, don't necessarily believe the legends because she was from a different town. And that's basically exactly what it was. Like, Annie Barrett was never murdered, not missing at all, just moved. She fell in love. The town of Spring Brook looked down upon this love, and they moved away to a different town, and she had a wonderful life. She had kids and grandkids and lived to like the ripe old age of 81.
Yeah, and her
And so
cousin just, acted like she got murdered instead of just fell in love and had a mixed race relationship. The huge.
As I guess Spring Brook people do. And made this elaborate story, like bought pig's blood and splashed it all over the walls, and made this huge elaborate story of like how his cousin Annie went missing and was murdered. But really, she just fell in love and moved away, and George looked down upon this relationship and refused to acknowledge it. So now they're like, well, what's going on then? Like, what are these drawings? What is happening? Nothing makes sense. So they're like, now they're like, what is happening? Because clearly something is happening, but it's not the spirit of Annie. Annie is not trying to talk to them. Annie lived a wonderful life, was not murdered, not missing, nothing. So they're like, all right, now what? So Adrian's, after he called Mallory to tell her that, all of this stuff that he found out about Annie and Dolores and the family, he's going to come back to the house, but he'll be there really late. He won't be back until like midnight. And she says, okay, I'll keep my eyes open for you. But then, lo and behold, the Maxwells come back. They were on like a vacation at the beach, but they're back now. And things really hit the fan. This is when things get wild. Because, like, what a red herring of Annie Barrett, right? So Caroline comes to talk to Mallory, and because Mallory's already found out something. She's found out a huge piece of the puzzle that they'd never had before, because Mallory also was never allowed to see Teddy kind of changing and getting dressed and undressed. At first it's described as like Teddy's just a very independent child, so he doesn't need any of that. But he is only 5, so who knows? But now we kind of find out the reason why. And the reason why is because Teddy is not a boy, Teddy's a girl. And Caroline is explaining that Teddy is expressing feelings of being transgender, and they're trying not to make a big deal of it and letting Teddy find his own gender expression. But Mallory's not convinced. She's like, there's something more here. Something is happening. And it's interesting how quickly Mallory puts together kind of what happened. Because in the beginning, Ted and Caroline had said what a hard time they had conceiving. Like, it was a whole process. They had such a hard time. So now Mallory is like, I feel like I know what happened. She also discovered that Anya is not a name and is the Hungarian word for mother. So she's like, you know what, Caroline, I know the truth now. You kidnapped Teddy, and you are, trying to change everything about him so you won't be caught. And I know what happened. And this, these drawings show the truth, basically. It is like, she puts it together really fast, I feel like. It's a little beyond belief. But, it's the storyline. She puts it together. And now Ted and Caroline have a major loose cannon on their hands. they obviously can't let Mallory escape knowing the information that she knows, because it's true. They did kidnap Teddy. Teddy is not their biological child like they're playing him off as. And so Caroline, we see her true colors now. We see her true colors. Because the reason Mallory put this 2 and 2 together is in the beginning, Caroline gave Mallory a little stun gun flashlight. And in one of the drawings, because Adrian took pictures of all of the drawings that were on the Maxwell's walls. And in one of the pictures, it shows like electric sparks on a person. And that's how Mallory puts this together, is this electric spark equal Caroline's stun gun.
Well, the angel wings and then her tattoo also.
Yeah. She has a tattoo of angel wings on her back.
Yeah, and that's also in the picture. It's like it looks like an angel zapping a person.
Yes. And taking a child.
Yep.
And so we really see like Caroline for her true self now. Caroline basically spills the whole story of what happened. And this person in the photos, this Anya, is Teddy's real mother. And she felt that Teddy's real mother was neglecting Teddy, whose name is Flora, protect the flower, because Flora / Teddy's mom was painting and not paying attention to Teddy. And Caroline was like, she's done this time and time again. Because basically they've tried all IVF and all of these things to try and conceive, and they can't do it. So Ted and Caroline feel like they need to kind of take a break from their lives and maybe de-stress, and that will help them conceive. So they get this cabin in, like, was it upstate New York?
Seneca Falls.
And to try and like decompress. And that's when Caroline sees Teddy / Flora and feels like Teddy / Flora's mother is, basically almost abusing Teddy / Flora because she's ignoring them. And
ignoring it.
So Caroline takes
her iPhone watching YouTube videos while sitting on a blanket with boys.
Yes.
And this she only sees her
the mom
once
is
a week. So she doesn't know the full story, and it's just assuming that she knows everything because for some reason society believes you see a child once and you know everything that's going on in their home. It drives me nuts.
Florence nuts. She's
get
nuts.
into it.
She's nuts. But so she believes that Teddy / Flora is being abused. So she needs to intervene in this scenario. And she's going to take them away and give them the wonderful upbringing that they should have that clearly they're not getting. And so she does. She goes and she snatches Teddy / Flora, and they're headed out into the woods.
The child goes and walks away because she's following a rabbit, because there's a rabbit in the picture. Yeah. And Caroline sees that the child's not getting watched, and she's going near a creek. So she's like, okay, I'm going to make sure this child isn't going to hurt, which, good on you. Do that. Sometimes parents miss things. So she's going, and she's like, well, her mom's not going to notice. So I'm going to take her for a walk. I promise. It's just going to be a walk. I'm going to show her some cool things. Well, then she gets in a fight with her mom because the mom's like, does pay attention and sees that her child is missing. So she goes running.
Yeah, and the mom's been looking for her daughter and like running around being like, hey. And so they've already had an altercation in the past where Caroline tried to intervene, and then they ended up screaming at each other in English and Hungarian respectively. So they already like have animosity. But then this mom sees that she's taken her kid and it's like, and Caroline stuns her with her stun gun. And the mom had some type of neurological condition. And so basically Caroline like killed her.
Yeah.
And then in Caroline's mind, the next step for this is to go call Ted so they can hide this woman's body, take the kid, and escape until they can assimilate this kid to be their kid. which Teddy Flora is like 2 years old at this time.
Yeah,
and so that's like the logical thing for Caroline, apparently.
Yeah, their story of that they were in Barcelona for 3 years.
Yeah, which Mallory knows is not true because Teddy said that they drove from Barcelona to Spring Brook, which is impossible.
Plus, he doesn't remember being on like a 16-hour flight. I'm pretty sure any kid will remember, even though they said, oh, we double dosed him on Benadryl. I'm sorry, that myth of Benadryl knocking out kids does not work. I have to give mine Benadryl for allergies. He is still wide awake and out of his mind. So he's not going to sleep.
But like any 5-year-old, I think, would remember taking the longest plane flight of their lives to date.
It would be exciting.
And not remember it as being driving, but remember it as going on a plane.
Yeah.
And Teddy does not. So basically, they were not in Barcelona, as Mallory suspected, and of course they weren't. They bought this like property in the middle of nowhere until they basically Stockholm syndromed Teddy into believing, one, he was a boy, his name was Teddy, and he was their child.
Yep.
And now that Teddy is more assimilated, they moved so that he can go to school.
But also, who had followed them to that area, to that like rural farmhouse in the middle of nowhere?
Anya did. Anya is gonna get her kid. And Teddy's mother, Flora's mother, has been Teddy's invisible friend. Anya comes and sings him/her Hungarian lullabies at night. And the Maxwells fully know this. And it's like a part of their routine. Like they're trying to escape Anya, but they know of her existence and her presence. And are just like, it's okay. Shoot's fine.
You're the night nurse. I'm done.
Yeah, it's cool. It's fine. And so, I mean, clearly, Caroline can't have Mallory knowing all of this information. Clearly, she can't. We also find out Caroline killed Mitzi. Caroline gave Mitzi an overdose because Mitzi found out the truth. And Caroline's going to do the exact same thing to Mallory. She's going to be like, she's going to give Mallory a fatal overdose of heroin laced with fentanyl. And then it's just telling Mallory, like, it's going to be such a sad story. Like, you just couldn't cope with your grief. So you fell off the wagon and OD'd. And that's going to be the end of your story, Mallory. Except it's not. Because Caroline's kind of forgotten about Ted. Ted, as it turns out, is a major creep. He's already given indications. I mean, and we skipped one big part that we'll mention now, but he has given indications of being inappropriate to Mallory. It started like when Mallory was swimming in the pool because Russell, her sponsor, has given her all of these different, he's basically training her. And so he wants her to swim laps as part of her conditioning and training. Because running has really helped Mallory in her recovery process. And so Ted is like being super creepy when Mallory gets out of the pool in her swimsuit. But then it full skyrockets, escalates. And Mallory comes home one night to find Ted in her cottage, in her bed.
Pantsless.
With super drunk. Yeah, pantsless in her bed with her bras in the bed with him. And she doesn't mention this to Caroline. She sends Ted on his way. She doesn't mention it because she doesn't want to embarrass him. She also doesn't want to jeopardize her job.
He does mention that she would be a great mother and that they could run away together.
Yeah, well, and now he does. So now enter Ted again. Ted the creep.
He did it in the first one too. He did it in the non-pants.
When he was drunk.
Yeah, he also said, run away, like, I'll take care of you type thing.
Yeah.
And then he did it again went even more creep mode when she got, he knocked her out with a wine bottle, and then, Caroline was gonna inject her, and she does inject her. But what's in the needle?
It's baby powder.
Which,
because Ted swapped
is that
it.
okay? Is that okay? Can we?
I feel like that's also not powder? Okay. I feel like baby powder to the veins is probably also not okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Mallory seems okay. She seems all right. But Ted swapped it because he's like, hey, we have this connection. I feel it. We can run away together. And leave Caroline in the past. We can run away together.
You know how I know? Because I've been watching you on the camera. Because, heaven forbid you need a fire alarm. I'm just going to stick a camera in there instead. So.
Yeah.
Don't break out.
And he does. And he's been watching her this whole time. And Caroline knows all about it. All about it.
Gross.
She knows how he's so gross. I mean, they're both so gross.
This is gross.
So gross. And they know the whole thing. They've known the whole time. Then he's had this weird thing for Mallory this whole time. So Mallory kind of starts playing along because she's like, I need to survive, and I need to go get Teddy / Flora, because clearly this is not a good place for that kid to be in. Teddy / Flora still has a dad.
Yeah, and he's been kidnapped. They've been kidnapped.
And he's been kidnapped. So, Mallory is like, she needs to go get Teddy. So she is playing along with Ted, and being like, yeah, sure. And then it just goes bananas. It goes bonkers. Like, Ted and Caroline get in like a shootout.
Yeah, well, Caroline shoots and Ted gets hit.
Yes. It's wild. And while they're doing that, Mallory scoots off and goes and gets Teddy from his room and brings him into the woods to hide him, because Adrian is going to be there at midnight, but he's not there yet. It's not midnight yet. He hasn't come, but she's waiting for him to arrive so he can like alert law enforcement, because stuff is happening. Like, Caroline's not going to let Mallory leave alive. And so they're hiding in the woods. And, as I said before, they found all of these little bits and bobs that they put in trees as like weapons. Well, they found the end of like a bolt, like an arrow bolt. They found the pointy end part and they put it in this tree. And so Mallory gets Teddy to go up this tree. She goes up this tree, and Teddy's like, I don't know, it's so scary. And then Caroline comes and he hears his mom, and he's gonna get down. And then, I mean, if you thought it couldn't get any crazier, it gets crazier. Anya possesses Teddy again, because she can use his right hand, takes this bolt, hops down like a monkey onto Caroline, and Teddy kills Caroline with the end of this arrow bolt. But Mallory is now hearing police, and she's like, I can't let Teddy take the blame for this. That's not right. So she grabs, and like, it wasn't really Teddy, because Teddy doesn't know what happened because he was possessed by his mother. So it's very, very like a weird Norman Bates scenario. And so she grabs the arrow and, like the cops, like, I did it in self-defense. And basically everything comes out about Ted and Caroline, like how crazy they were. Granted, Mallory can't say anything about ghosts or anything like that because the cops would think she's nuts, and she doesn't want to give Teddy away. She doesn't want Teddy to face any repercussions, any more so than all of the poor trauma that kid has been through. So she takes the blame, but the police believe her story because it's basically the truth. So they let her off. Ted and Caroline were clearly crazy.
Also dead.
And it was also dead. They're both dead. Caroline killed Ted. And Teddy / Flora killed Caroline. So they're both dead. But the police determined that it was in self-defense. And so Teddy's / Flora's dad comes and gets Teddy. And so Mallory now doesn't really have much contact with Teddy because Teddy is, I mean, obviously that kid has really been through a lot of trauma. And just, I mean, the psychological abuse is just staggering.
Yeah.
And clearly Teddy / Flora needs a lot of therapy to try and even possibly cope with what they've been through. And so they're going through, gender therapy so Teddy can kind of have a chance to decide if he wants to be a boy or if he wants to be a girl. And Teddy's kind of like, Mallory mentions it later, but is basically always been a girl, like chooses girly colors and has always like gravitated towards more feminine things. And so Teddy is now transitioned to be Flora. Teddy's decided that he wants to be his, born gender. But clearly that's going to take much therapy to cope with because Caroline has really messed this kid up astronomically. So Flora is now living with her dad, and which in a way I think is the best thing that could have happened for Flora, because now she has a bunch of cousins and kids that she can play with, because that was something that Teddy didn't have, was kids to play with, in a way where she can really recuperate and figure out as much as you can at like 5 and 6 who you are, basically intrinsically who you are, which is a question that I think most of us as people, think about all the way into adulthood, is like who we are as people. And Flora is having to do that as, a 5, 6-year-old. So Mallory really wants to see Teddy. She's going to college now. She's trying to become a kindergarten teacher. She and Adrian are still a thing, which is very cute. They're a very cute couple. And she, yeah, she really wants to see Flora, but, it's not a good time. Like, Flora is going through it and is still trying to process everything that's happened and going through therapy. And so at the end of the book, we finally see that Mallory does get to see Flora, but it's not anything that she thought it would be, because, Flora's not Teddy. And I can't imagine the psychological damage that whole scenario did for Flora and how much she would want to block that out because it was so hurtful to her.
Weird is she gave Flora a gift after her dad had said in Flora's world there's playing with cousins and not drawing alone. Mm-hmm. But she gave her gifts of stuff to draw. She's like, well, maybe she'll want to rehash it. I'm like, yeah, maybe if she's like in high school when she's really dealt with all this stuff, like maybe she'll want to draw again, but not within a few months.
No, but I mean, I think for Mallory, the only one she knew was Teddy, and Teddy liked to draw because his mom, Anya, liked to draw. So, I think it's hard to move forward too for Mallory as well. They've both been through something exceptionally traumatic, especially Flora. So Flora is like, cool, thanks. Can I leave now?
Yeah.
She's not ready. Like, she's mentally not ready. And then it finally dawns on Mallory, like, hey, clearly she's not ready, and that's okay. So they leave after trying to say their pleasantries. They leave, and Flora comes out to give Mallory a hug before Mallory goes and give her one last drawing, which is the least scary, sweetest drawing in this book. You can kind of see it. It's just a picture of Mallory and Flora together. And Mallory is like, and we find out that Mallory is writing a book about everything that happened for Flora to read whenever Flora is ready.
Yeah, I think her dad recommended that.
Yeah.
So.
Which, I think is good. And that's kind of how it ends. But what a wild ride.
Yeah, the ending was really good.
I really thought that, granted it was a massive red herring, but I was like, I thought that, maybe that it was like not Annie Barrett that died, but like a different, maybe like a Hungarian
it was
nanny.
Like, yeah, I thought it was like maybe it was their first nanny that Ted killed or something.
That's what I thought too.
Her name was Anya,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I listened to it, and when listening to it and listening to the person who's reading the book, it sounds like all the teen books out there, because I don't know, the voices sound the same. And so I was like, this is so much teen angst. I had to stop listening to it for a few times, because I'm like, I'm having panic attacks with all the angst that's going on. Like, you're bringing me back to a time and place I don't want to be. I'm old and don't care anymore about any of this. But like the lie, and it's like the old trope. Oh, I lied. They're always going to find out. You have 300 pages. Somewhere in there, they're going to find out.
Like, they're going to find out. And I mean, you can see why. I mean, Mallory wants a different life, and she's trying to reinvent herself, and she's like, well, this is kind of like the perfect opportunity, and she keeps meaning to tell the truth, but everything is going so well that she feels like she can't tell the truth.
She's so honest.
Always ends up worse.
Everywhere else she's like lays it out. She's like, yep, I'm a heroin addict. Yep, I'm recovering. Yep, I'm doing this. She sees a boy.
She really likes Adrian.
Then you should tell him the truth.
She doesn't tell him the truth. It just comes out, but they grapple with it together.
Even when put up against the wall, she still doesn't really, until he comes and talks to her. So so the angsty, there's a little bit of some tropes in here that I was just like, can we not, like, can we just get away from this? So the angst, the teen angst, the lie, which annoys me. The man who can't handle a younger woman and without like Russell, good guy. He's like,
Russell's a good guy.
Yeah, we like Russell.
Up for Russell.
I was hoping like that Ted would also be a good guy, because not every dad is going to fall in love with the nanny. Like, no matter what's going on with their marriage, not every dad's like, oh man, that nanny, she's younger, must be super into me. Like,
I mean, but Ted was creepy from the gate. Like, he put a camera in the cottage from the get-go.
We didn't know that until
we didn't know that until the end. But he clearly, and Caroline had said that he was attracted to Mallory in the beginning.
But he also said he tried to scare her off like he did all the other candidates. Because
with all of those crazy questions.
He knew, he knew that it was Bad News Bears going into the start. So, I don't know. I'm just, stop.
Massive creep.
Every middle-aged man is going to go for the 20-year-old nanny. I mean, at least I'd hope. I'm putting hope out there.
Ted, massive creep. Caroline, massive creep.
Ugh. Let's see.
And for her being a psychologist to not even want something so much that you put your wants over the mental well-being of a small child. I don't know how that she could reconcile that in her brain.
Probably nature, like, saying, hey, you shouldn't be a mom, because moms don't do that. Moms always put their child over themselves. So maybe it's
not Caroline.
Darwinism, where it's like, well, we're going to try to weed out your crazy by you not having any children. Because we don't want that.
I mean, for somebody to be in the mental health field and just somehow are just able to reconcile you destroying somebody's entire self-image, bananas.
She is bananas. She's cuckoo bananas, She wants a baby so bad. And so this book touched on so many nightmares of so many parents. Okay, 5-year-old drawing weird, creepy drawings of their nightmare-esque imaginary friend. There are so many stories on BuzzFeed, Reddit.
Being killed, dragged into the woods, and buried.
Yeah, but please sing my child Hungarian nursery rhymes. Please lullaby them to sleep. No, thank you. Not ever. If my kid came and said, Mom, I have an imaginary friend, these sing Spanish nursery rhymes, but yet they were murdered and hung on a tree, I'd be like, I'm sorry, we're moving, burning the house down, saging everything. The second, the kidnapping. And her just, Caroline thinking that she knew better, because that's what she went. She went to the mom, this is ruining the child's imagination. You see this child.
They shouldn't be on this phone.
Yeah, once a week for 2 hours saying, she's on the phone watching YouTube. Maybe she doesn't see the phone at all the whole time she's with her mom all week. And this is her mom's one time to go painting. And so she's like, here's a phone. Because I can tell you right now, my kids, if they had a phone in their hand, they would not be sitting still. They would be gone everywhere. I don't know any child who just would sit, a 2-year-old, and just watch. I'm assuming they've never seen it. So they're like, oh my God, this is magic. And so for her to assume, which is such a societal problem, where they're assuming that they know better than the mom. It's like, I would say, for the mom, if you're painting, I get it, but put the easel behind your child so you can see your child in front of you at all times. I'm psychotic with my children, so I'm like always watching.
But I mean, for Caroline to just assume that clearly this child is being abused because they're watching the phone for 2 hours is an incredible supposition on her part. And I mean, clearly just reading what she wants to see because she wants a kid. She wants Flora.
She's like, this is going to ruin their imagination. You straight up took her and said you were a boy. That's going to straight up ruin their whole mental health. But cool. Yeah. You lady no need children.
Bananas.
I think another cool thing about this book was it touched on so many different topics. The opiate crisis, how easy, and she even talked about how easy it was to ask her friends to get oxys, so she can
look in their medicine cabinets at home.
Yeah, and how much it is to go from Oxycontin to heroin, and that's such a big thing now, and such a crisis now. So it was like a not nice, but it was a cool thing to see, because you're like, yeah, that's a problem. Texting and driving. And
you can really, and I mean, you can really empathize with Mallory. She's an exceptionally empathetic character. And, clearly she's not a quote unquote bad person. She just suffered some really terrible moments that she's trying to self-medicate and figure out how she can feel better.
If she didn't want to feel. And that's the one way you don't feel. Yeah.
Because she felt so much guilt about her sister.
Yeah.
Even though it was not her fault.
Yeah, and the texting and driving, she glanced her phone, and, I have been guilty of doing that, so now I just throw my phone in my bag and just, don't look at it, 'cause I usually have my kids in the car. But there was a pile up that she missed from the mountain bike, so it wasn't just her,
No, but it wasn't just her. And I mean, she looked for, and it only takes a split second, but she looked for a split second at her phone, she looked down, and the next she knows she's in the hospital.
Yeah, they're barrel rolling and she's in the hospital. Yeah, so I mean, it's another warning, don't text and drive. My gripe is, why does she basically tell them like everything? Like, I know all of your secrets. Let me out them, and then go in ahead.
It was like a very
police
like. It was like cool nod to like the classic whodunits, like a Hercule Poirot, when he like gathers everybody in this lounge or whatever, and then it's like, I know exactly who did it, and I know how, and I'm gonna tell you everything right now. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what she did.
But like, you're telling the wrong person, and because you're by yourself. Like,
yeah, she's by herself, and like Russell's not there, Adrian's not coming.
Ted's dead.
I mean, Ted is, well, he's not dead yet, but he's a massacre. And then he dies, and then she's stuck with Caroline.
And then Caroline,
insane,
the villain, tells her whole story. So it's like that parody of like, well, now let me tell you all of my misdeeds.
Yes, let me tell you all of my misdeeds so I can make it sound better for myself.
Yeah. Like, don't.
So you can somehow sympathize with my actions and like understand why I did the things I did.
And let me keep my kidnapped child. No, thank you.
Yes.
Favorite part is when Ted says, let Teddy keep 2 mommies and we can just escape.
I mean, my goodness, Ted.
Just 2 mommies.
Yeah, so like Ted's trying to convince Mallory to run away with him, and Mallory's like, well, what about Teddy? And Ted's like, meh, don't worry about it. He's got Caroline. It's fine. And Anya. So he's good to go.
He's fine. He's got 2 mommies.
I mean, who knows where their heads are at, because they're clearly not right.
Yeah. So the weird part of this book, I mean, this book gets pretty weird in different parts, is, okay, so in the beginning we have, she can feel the male gaze, right? And then you can feel Anya, her presence, right? Anya's not male. Mm-hmm. But she can't feel the camera that's in the fire alarm. So she says, I feel something, but it must be Anya. Yeah. And then the doctor at the end, who goes to the mom's house or something and says, like, I want to talk to her. Nothing comes of that. Just like,
no, that's one of the big loose ends.
Like, she's just like, I don't want to deal with the doctor right now. And it's like, I'm sorry, deal with her. Give me epilogue 2. Like, dealing with doctor.
We want to know, like, is Mallory psychic? Because that's kind of what it's hinting at, is she has some type of psychic ability. But we'll never know.
Like, is this a real story? Is there an article? Is there science that I can know about? Like, tell me. I'm interested in that part.
We'll never know. No. But yeah, that was like, I felt that was the biggest kind of letdown loose end, because there was, like, we started the book with that.
Yeah.
And then it just didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, that was fist making. That's all my.
It was a good book. Like, I was really surprised by the twist ending. I truly didn't expect that, because it does kind of lead you into thinking that, this is just another trope of the supernatural, and they're gonna solve this crime that this ghost is leading them to. And like, yes and no. Yes, it is, but no, it's not.
Yeah, that twist, I think that's really good. I didn't think anyone saw it coming. I mean, if you did, good for you.
Good for you. You should maybe think about going into detecting work, be a PI.
Find out what that male gaze means while you're at it. Figure out all the mysteries.
Like, I feel like the red herrings in the book were really good, because like the author's really leading you down one path, and so you're very focused on this one path, and clearly all the side stuff's happening, but you're so laser focused on Amy Barrett
I think what would have been even better is, and I know this is written by a man, but if this like was written like the book author of the actual book was called like Mallory Quinn.
Yeah.
That is an author.
That would have been really good.
I think she's a romance writer.
This is her book.
Yeah.
This is Mallory's book.
I think that would have been so cool.
Jason, that would have been really cool.
I can't pronounce your last name.
Next time. No, that's why I didn't say it, because I have no idea how to say it.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's Rekulak, but who knows?
Yeah,
who knows?
Sorry.
I also really like the aspects of having the pictures in the book, like to tell its own story, was really cool.
Yeah, I went to go check it out because I want to see the pictures, and then once you saw the
they're
pictures,
creepy.
Like, yeah, you're like, oh no, thank you.
And the thing is like the fully illustrated pictures are creepy, but I think that Teddy's stick figure drawings of the woman being dragged in the hole, those are far creepier than the fully illustrated.
Like the smiling man, the lady under the table, like no thank you. No. Like
the stick figure drawings are terrifying.
Yeah, a kid's doing creepy drawings is always going to be creepier than anything else you see. So
and it was.
It was so like I'm gonna go tell my kid to just go draw rainbows or something.
They were far creepier, but like I do think that this book, I mean, you can listen to it like Jasmine did, but I do think you miss out on a big component if you don't have the physical book to really look at those photos.
Yeah, I would look at the photos. Listen to the book if you want to, car ride. It's a good book to listen to. I didn't hate it.
Not like the last one.
We're not allowed to talk about that anymore. That book died.
We have been banned from talking about it at work because we argue too much about that book we read last month.
We yell. I yell. Yeah, so it was a really good listen. I had to stop because of the angst, too much angst for me. But that's usually any teen book, because it was getting really teeny. It's like, oh, I liked the boy, I liked how awesome am I going to solve this murder, all the teen drama. I didn't remember solving.
I mean, Mallory is just like out of teenagerdom, so it tracks for her voice. She's like 21.
Yeah,
like 21. She's pretty young.
She is, but stop. Stop with the angst.
Which I didn't get as much angst, but I did read it. So I feel like when you read it, you can put it in your own voice.
You hear like the tone go up, the pitch go up, the need. So it's also why I like listening to audiobooks.
I don't have enough focus to listen to anything.
I don't have the time to actually read words on pages. Kids don't let me do it. So
that's fair.
Charlotte also got to listen to the book.
It kind of works out though. So then you guys kind of get a perspective of the book and the audiobook, and you can make your choices and decisions on which media you'd prefer to enjoy the book in.
Yeah. Look at us doing all the work for you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was our spooky month pick, Hidden Pictures. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you read it. If you liked it or didn't like it, let us know. We'd love to know if you saw that twist coming or not. And we hope you join us next month for a new book.